Welcome to week 6. Hope blah blah blah. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope that you are making your way through the book. You have done the gauntlet of the different Blackboard discussions. You've done your interview project. Now, guess what? We're getting close. We're getting close. I've been a little tardy in getting your Blackboard graded, and so for that, if that has caused you friction, if that has caused frustration, if that has caused trepidation or anything like that, I am very, very sorry for that. Definitely not my heart, but again, the dynamic is there are policies in place. I didn't adhere to those. I didn't adhere to getting those graded in time, and so in that, I am extremely sorry. And I hope you do forgive me. So with that, moving forward, hopefully everything minus your interview project is graded to date, and I am working through those as we speak. Week 6. It has been fun to get to read your Blackboard discussions. I have seen tremendous growth. For some of y'all that I've had in class, it's been amazing to get to see the ability that you have already. And for those of y'all that this is your first class, it's been fun to get to see the ability that you already have in helping people. From someone that's been in the field for 17 years, in the church, out of the church, it's fun to get to play a part in the field of academia, to get to see who's coming behind you. What is the field going to look like maybe as you transition out, or maybe as to see who's coming in behind you with what research, what anointings, those type of things like that. And so to me, I will say by your work, the field's looking really, really good, knowing that we have you coming in behind to help people. So I look forward to getting to read your research. I look forward to getting to read case studies that you create, social media posts, those type of things like that. So again, welcome to the field of helping people and helping hurting people. And so it really, really is fun. And so with that, let's dive in. Week 6. I've heard a lot of people talk about kind of the biology side of things. And so it's good to understand that the place of impact is going to be biological, right? The idea of how is it impacting them in that very moment, and understanding that we're spiritual beings that have a physical body that can think, that can feel, that can choose. And understanding how that's supposed to be further assimilated as one heartbeat through one perspective, through one image, to reflect the image of God. Now, of course, we understand Genesis 3, but we understand the cross. Are they walking in the fullness of the cross as they walk out the full imagery of who God is? And as a result of that, knowing that pain impacts people, and crisis has the opportunity of creating pain. Well, Brady, you'd say, well, doesn't crisis just cause pain? Well, I think that's probably safe to say, but again, the dynamic is we don't really ever want to assume anything. We want to assess as people are coming in the office, if you're working with them in that complexity, and or you're assessing them if you're going on ground to a place like an Oklahoma City bombing or something of that nature. So the dynamic of assessing, where are they? And helping them ground, because the dynamic of knowing, okay, so the right brain is hyperactive, left brain is hyperdormant. So the dynamic of really talk therapy in that moment might not be the most sensitive thing to do. Now, again, we typically have that notion to move forward with talk therapy. Why? Because that's what we're trained to do, is really talk to individuals and allow them to talk back to us so that we can help them process through, giving them the power to acknowledge words to what they're feeling so that they can emote and get those things out. But if that's not where they are, then to the extent of like the philosophy of Paul, and when he came to the church of Athens, the Athenians, he met them where they were. And he waited, and he waited, and he waited till his opportunity of actually voicing what he felt was important. The dynamic of being able to teach them who God was through this formation of all these other gods, and to the extent of helping them take their next step. And really, I use that in a lot of classes and a lot of imageries to the extent because I think it gives us a true representation of what our role is. The dynamic of where do they want to go? Well, again, if they've been impacted by a crisis, then where is their equilibrium? The idea, if we look at this through the image of a boxing match, and somebody just got got hit really, really hard in their face and they're staggering. Where's their equilibrium? And so if we can kind of assess crisis through the lens of a boxing match, even though I don't really watch it, don't know why that illustration kind of came up, but we're going to go with it. The dynamic of how do we get that individual that's staggering to a place of equilibrium? And also the dynamic of to some sense of normalcy, knowing that whatever they experience, that their normalcy is going to look a lot differently as a result of that. So how do we establish some expectations of them knowing that their life is not going to look like how it looked, moments before the crisis? But going back to this state of hyperactive right brain, hyperdormant left brain, the dynamic of assessing people biologically and even neurologically to help them assess this standpoint of staggering is important. So when we think about right brain dynamics, what do we think about? What do you think about? What are the things that could really meet people where they are when they go through something that has been earth-shattering for them? The terminology we like to use is heartbreaking, right? So the dynamic of how do we help them slowly allow their heart to be reassembled so that they can actually take another step? What are your thoughts? What do you do? And again, there's a lot of complexities y'all have read, y'all have actually articulated very, very well through the Blackboard discussions. The difficult nature of these case studies, and again, the case studies are anticipating to give you the opportunity to think through certain scenarios and bringing the field to you. But nothing can prepare you for the field but the field. And, well, Brady, that makes sense. Nothing can prepare you for the field but the field. But the idea of being able to think through a crisis logically and being able to assess it logically and being able to articulate it logically, does it really kind of allow you to experience what it will be like sitting across from somebody that has had their world turned upside down? I remember being in high school, playing basketball, and you think about in the game how you are winded and then all of a sudden you get fouled, and so therefore you have to kind of collect yourself to be able to shoot free throws. Well, but in practice, we have the opportunity of, okay, coach saying, hey, go shoot 25 free throws and then you're free to go. Well, those are at a different pace. Those don't really have the live game dynamics attached to them. So how do we really prepare in practice for what can happen in a game? How do we really practice of what takes place in a case study to the real thing? But I think as you prepare yourself and actually imagine what it must be like and put yourself actually into these case studies to see, oh my goodness. And what I loved reading was how many of y'all actually assessed what would be going on inside you. My rule of thumb is always address internally. Always address the internal first before the external. Whether that's in marriage counseling, telling the individuals that have something to tell his wife or husband, whether it's whatever complexity of counseling it is. Even for us as a counselor, and you may ask, Brady, how do we do that? If I'm sitting there trying to be present, this individual's telling me this crisis orientation, and all of a sudden it triggers something in me, and I am flooded. What do we do? Do I time out, go collect myself and come back? Do I disassociate? Do I repress for the sake of the individual? Or do I listen but acknowledge real quick, God, hey, this is what's going on in me. Will you come in? And after the session, being able to process that thereafter. And we see this within Jesus doing this extremely well. Why? He's in the midst of a crisis. He's in the midst of the crisis after he hears about the beheading of John the Baptist. And as a result of that, he's going to meet with his counselor, the Father, if I can utilize it in that illustration, if you can go with me. And he removes himself to really connect. And as a result of that, here comes all this crowd following him. Does he reject? Does he repress? Well, Brady, do we really know? No, but what we do know is the dynamic is that he processes thereafter. And so knowing that we've talked about taking care of yourself, self-care, is making sure that these stories, because they have an opportunity of really impacting us after you hear about them day after day, hour after hour, month after month, year after year, to the point where we lose any compassion fatigue, where we lose any sensation of caring. So the dynamic of that is making sure that we can take care of ourselves. And even though we might not have the opportunity of really processing everything that we're hearing that's impacting us significantly in that moment, a lot of it I just want to acknowledge. In my mind, I say, God, this is a lot. Will you come in? And that's it. So that I can continue to attune and stay present in what that individual needs. But also, or you may find me doing something like this. I'm validating the biology within myself by physical touch of laying my hands on my heart. Or some of y'all that understand and like emotional freedom technique, now I'm a big advocate of that and I actually utilize it a lot because it's an integrational tool of how I utilize it. You may find me kind of just tapping my leg, validating what's going on inside me so that I can continue to be present. So as you've ran the gauntlet of this semester, you've learned about reassurance. You've learned about validating. You've learned about, did I say being present already? If I did, I can't remember already. Wow, okay. But you've learned these complexities. How do we use them to a benefit to the individual that's coming in? Game setting is a little bit different than sitting and thinking through these complexities, reading them, thinking, oh my goodness, but here we go. So how do you prepare these case studies and prepare for them so that therefore you can allow the field to help you now in the field of academia get ready for what's waiting for you? Biology. Right brain goes hyperactive, left brain goes hyperdormant. So how do we meet people where they are? Coloring, bilateral coloring. Give them a crown in both hands and let them go after it. Hey, draw me a picture. Hey, you know what? I've got, the dynamic of, we're going to do some coloring. I know that sounds weird. I just feel like some coloring would be cool. Let's do some coloring. However we communicate it. Again, I may not even communicate it that way. I don't know how to communicate it until I'm actually in there. But the dynamic of how do we meet them where they are? Just like Paul. Meet them, hopefully they take a step. Meet them where they are, hopefully they take a step. That's really what our role is as a counselor. Meeting people where they are. Do I sit and be present? Waiting for them? Because again, in our minds as a counselor, we're wanting to drive them to somewhere. Okay? But what's the timetable? Is there a timetable? Do you have an agenda? Should there be an agenda? And really, when you think about the dynamic of process, what is your process? What is your process as people come through the door? If you think typically, last time I looked, 15 to 32 sessions is what's typical meeting with an individual. Now, again, that's probably a little bit more realistic when you think about insurance versus cash pay. The dynamic of someone sitting across from you for 32 sessions, is that realistic for someone in cash pay? And if it is, then great, you have this opportunity of a great linear approach. But what if 4 sessions because of finances? Part of the crisis that they've experienced now that they're needing help, but they don't have the opportunity of affording it. What do we do? How do we meet people where they are? And talk therapy is great, but just like the renewing of our mind, there's a process to get there. And if we just jump straight to it, do we benefit people? There's a process of helping people walk through a crisis, but again, the dynamic of helping people get to that end all goal can be beneficial. But if we hop to it and we just jump right there, we impact them significantly along the way. We cause confusion. Because remember, left brain's hyperdormant. So what does coloring look like? What does it creating opportunities and really studying right brain type therapy approaches to the point of people in crisis so that therefore collages? having a bunch of magazines, allowing them to create a collage by cutting and pasting, where there's really not a whole lot of talking other than just the dynamics, like a play therapist looking for themes, looking for where they're putting it on the collage, where they're grouping it, because they're telling you something by the placement on the page. Just like play therapy, the child through play is telling you something. And as we continue to validate where they are, hopefully they'll take a step to the point that we can get to this place of being able to talk to them. Again, I've said it too many times, but again, it's always worth saying it again. Validate, 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 and then validate some more. Music can be powerful, because helping them find their voice is extremely necessary. Crisis counseling, non-crisis counseling. The idea of them giving a voice to the complexities going on inside them, so that they have the opportunity of proclaiming them, emoting them, is necessary. And you're going to hear, "Oh, Brady, I'm not feeling anything." Okay. Well, there's indifference in the mind and apathy in the body. But again, not feeling, is that still feeling? So can you start there? The process of helping them think differently is necessary and needed, and is a tremendous goal. But how do we get there? And crisis counseling can be very, like play therapy, can take a little bit of time. And so what is your process? If somebody comes for 32 sessions, okay, what does that look like? But if someone comes 4 sessions, what is it that is the main thing that you want them to leave with, so that therefore it can be a win and can be productive and they can take another step? In my process, awareness is always key. Awareness is always key. If they come in greater aware, if they leave greater aware than when they came in, I consider it a significant win, because we can't change what we're not aware of. So the dynamic of right brain was always like by them, "Hey, here's what I want you to do. I'm going to sit on the couch. I'm going to turn the lights down. I'm going to play some music, and here's what I want you to do. I just want you to lay your hands on this side of your head, where the right brain is. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. We're going to do that for a little bit. I'll play some instrumental music, whatever that may be. And again, what is it doing? It's meeting them where they are. Because if we don't, we have the opportunity of creating confusion, because anything that we communicate, if they're not logically in the space, then as a result of that, they're not hearing it. They might be listening, but are they hearing? The dynamic of being able to receive. So, as you've read this semester, what does it look like? What does your process look like? You've learned a lot through this text. How do you take that and apply it to yourself? And I think one of the great things as you conclude for this class is sit with a piece of paper and with God and saying, "God, what would a linear progression of helping someone through a crisis look like? In my own words, in my own verbiage, how do I put this on paper so that therefore, guess what? It's not just trying to remember, oh, what did that doctor, that researcher?" No, it's a part of you. And I actually would maybe suggest that you do that with Everglass. The opportunity of being able to have your own verbiage so that therefore it's in you And regardless of who walks to the door, you've got it on hand. Why? Because it's a part of who you are. It's in you, so that therefore you can articulate it and access it at any time. 17 years, I can't tell you a whole lot about what the authors and the researchers said back when I was in school. I remember a lot of the foundational things, but continuing to ask God, how do I word that in a way that sounds like me, so that therefore it absorbs and I can communicate it when necessary? What is your process? Awareness to willingness, to invitation, inviting God in, for emoting, getting it out, to transformation, helping them think differently. It's really the process I walk by. And so what is your process? And having a process is necessary because, again, you're going to hear stories that could actually throw you off because of the in-depthness of impact and pain that the person's feeling, that you're sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do. What's your process? Oh, we're growing in awareness. I want them to grow. Okay, great. How do we help them in that moment? Well, before that, what state of mind are they in? What brain frequency are they in? Are they in an alpha state? Or if they're in an alpha state, great. Are they in a hyper beta? Well, again, probably a lot of anxiety. Are they in a theta? Great. Now we're in meditating. Delta, they're probably having a nap on your couch. Right? But the dynamic of where are they neurologically? Where are they biologically? Because as we continue to help them get to a place of equilibrium, right, where there is some symmetry between the right and left, and the opportunity, so that therefore, guess what? We can acknowledge emotion and thought. We can acknowledge validating emotion, so that therefore we can invite God into that, so that therefore they can emote. But don't be in a hurry in this process. And I don't say that from a marketing standpoint. I don't say that so that you can retain. I say that for the standpoint that, guess what? This may take some time. Why? Because people in crisis just had their world turned upside down, and the dynamic of what they knew everything to look like is not going to look like that moving forward. And for them to wrap their mind around that may take some time. So, meet them where they are. Help them take a step. Meet them where they are. Help them take a step to the point where the equilibrium can happen. Validation, to the point of actually now getting to this place of talk therapy, so that we can really gain some ground at this particular point in time. But what are those right brain things? Is it collaging? Is it coloring? Is it bilateral coloring? Is it drawing pictures? What is it? Is it listening to music? Is it writing music? Is it painting? What does that look like for you as you incorporate these things? I remember doing ministry sessions at the very beginning when I first started doing counseling. I was at a church, and that's one of the things that we'd always start off with. People come into a session, we kind of introduce ourselves, and we say, okay, hey, guess what we're going to do right now before we get going? I just want to throw on a worship song, and hey, feel free to respond however you want to. Now we're going to do that, and then we're going to get going. And we turn on a worship song, and typically one that was a little bit more instrumental, one that was a little bit more not fast-paced and kind of, I don't know if wild's the right word. I'm not sure what the word is, but not anything fast-paced. And when the song would end, we'd turn it down really low. And then we would lead them into a time of breathing. God, thank you for breath. Thank you that you are. It is your, I'm trying to think how the words go. It is your breath in our lungs that we can pour out our praise. Usually a lot of times I'll start off prayers with songs. And as a result of that, and so in that, God, we take breaths in. So let's all breathe in right now. And I'll tell you, okay, ready? We're going to count in. Ready? Breathe in for 6 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, let's hold that breath for 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's breathe out for 12. And we'll lead them through breathing, and then we'll end in prayer. God, thank you for your breath. Thank you for today. Thank you for this dear woman or man. And Lord, thank you for what it is you're going to do. In Jesus' name, amen. And we'll sit back. And we'll wait for them to respond. And that could be an introduction to a ministry session or a counseling session, depending upon how you market or let people know about the expectation of who you are as a clinician. But the dynamic of meeting people in a creative element, it's impacting. So, all the things that you learned through this semester: crisis counseling. Any counseling could be considered crisis counseling. I know that there's a formality to what we consider crisis counseling. But do they believe it's a crisis? And how do we take what we've learned, apply it, ask God to put it into our words so that we can have it absorbed in us and apply it to the people that we interact with. Have a great week 6. See you back for week 7.